Life was simple. Work boots, honest labor, calloused hands, my world. Then, the mirror. An antique, ornate, a gift from my grandmother. It found a home in my bedroom. I didn't think much of it, just a mirror. One evening, something changed. I saw it, a discrepancy in my reflection. Subtle, easy to dismiss, but it was there. I shook it off, tiredness playing tricks. Or so I thought. Days turned into weeks. The reflection, it was different. My movements mirrored perfectly. But the eyes, they didn't match. A subtle shift, a flicker, like the mirror held its breath. Unease crept in. I started avoiding eye contact with the reflection. A chill ran down my spine every time I passed it. I told myself it was stress. But deep down, I knew. Something was wrong. Terribly wrong. One night I woke up, heart pounding, a feeling, someone watching. I turned to the mirror. The reflection, it was smirking. Not my smirk, a grotesque imitation, full of malice. Terror, raw and consuming, gripped me. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. I was paralyzed. The reflection's smirk widened, a silent mockery of my fear. It knew I was trapped. The smirk was gone by morning, just my reflection, or so I thought. But something had shifted. The air was heavy, silence punctuated by whispers. My name hissed from the mirror's depths. No one believed me, said it was stress, fatigue. But I knew. The mirror, it was alive, and it was calling to me, whispering my doom. Section 5. Trapped. Days blurred into nightmares. The reflection grew bolder. Sometimes it moved on its own, mimicking me with a sinister grace. I was a prisoner in my own home. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. They promised power, knowledge. All I had to do was step through, join the reflection. One day, a glimmer of hope. A traveling antique dealer. He saw the mirror, his face pale. He knew. He told me of a ritual, a way to break the curse. It was dangerous, but it was my only chance. He gave me a silver amulet, whispered the incantation. Hope flickered, a fragile flame in the encroaching darkness. I followed the ritual precisely. The room grew cold, the reflection enraged. It lunged from the mirror, a screaming apparition. I closed my eyes, uttered the final words of the incantation. Silence. I opened my eyes. The mirror was empty. The room was still. Had I succeeded? I got rid of the mirror, of course. But some things can't be unseen. The fear remains, a constant companion. I still hear whispers, my name echoing in the stillness of the night. I know it's watching, waiting for me to let my guard down, to claim me as its own. I see it everywhere now, in every reflective surface. The glint of a window pane, a still pond. The reflection is always there, lurking, observing, and I know one day it will return for me. Just when I thought I had reached the pinnacle of my despair, an unexpected visitor arrived. The antique dealer, the one who had sold me the cursed mirror, stood at my doorstep. His eyes held a grave seriousness that sent shivers down my spine. Gap 3, S. I must warn you, he began, his voice trembling. The mirror you possess is not just any antique. It is part of a set, each with its own unique curse. The reflection you see is only the beginning of a greater danger. Gap 3, S. My heart pounded in my chest as he continued. To be free, you must find and destroy all the mirrors in the set. They are scattered, but each one harbors a piece of the evil that binds you. Gap 3, S. His words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of the revelation. The task seemed impossible, yet it was my only hope. Gap 3, S. The dealer handed me an ancient, tattered map. This will guide you, he said. But be warned, the journey will be perilous. The curses are not just confined to reflections. They are living, breathing entities that will stop at nothing to keep you trapped. Gap 3S. As he turned to leave, he looked back one last time. Remember, destroying the mirrors is the only way to break the curse. Fail, and you will be lost forever. Gap 3S. With that, he vanished into the night, leaving me alone with the daunting task ahead. The journey to find and destroy the cursed mirrors had begun, and with it, a new chapter in my harrowing tale. With the antique dealer's warning echoing in my mind, I knew I had no time to waste. The hunt for the other cursed mirrors had begun. Gap 3S. The ancient, tattered map he had given me was my only guide. Each mirror was hidden in a different location, each one more dangerous than the last. Gap 3S. My first destination was an abandoned mansion on the outskirts of town, a place long forgotten and shrouded in mystery. Gap 3S. The air grew colder as I approached, the weight of the curse heavy on my shoulders. I could feel the malevolent presence of the mirror even before I stepped inside. Gap 3S. The mansion's decaying walls seemed to whisper secrets of the past, as if warning me of the perils that lay ahead. Gap 3S. With every step, the tension mounted. Shadows danced on the walls and the sound of my own heartbeat echoed in my ears. Gap 3S. As I ventured deeper into the mansion, I knew that this was only the beginning. Each mirror I found would bring me closer to breaking the curse, but it would also bring me face to face with unimaginable dangers. Gap 3S. The journey was fraught with peril, but I had no choice. To reclaim my life and escape the nightmarish reflection, I had to find and destroy each cursed mirror. Gap 3S. My resolve hardened as I pressed on, determined to overcome the malevolent forces that sought to keep me trapped. The hunt had begun, and there was no turning back. As I ventured deeper into the abandoned mansion, the air grew thicker with an ominous energy. The antique dealer's map had led me to a grand, decaying ballroom, its once opulent chandeliers now hanging like skeletal remains. Gap 3S. In the center of the room stood the first mirror, its frame ornate but tarnished, and its surface reflecting a twisted, sinister version of myself. Gap 3S. My reflection's eyes glowed with a malevolent intensity, a cruel smirk playing on its lips as if it were mocking my very existence. Gap 3S. I could feel the weight of the curse pressing down on me, but I knew what I had to do. Gap 3S. Clutching the amulet the antique dealer had given me, I began to recite the incantation he had taught me. Gap 3S. The words felt foreign on my tongue, but as I spoke them, the room seemed to vibrate with a newfound energy. Gap 3S. My reflection's smirk faltered, and for a moment I saw a flicker of fear in its eyes. Gap 3S. With a final desperate shout, I completed the incantation and thrust the amulet towards the mirror. Gap 3S. A blinding light erupted from the amulet, engulfing the mirror and shattering its glass into 1,000 pieces. Gap 3S. The room fell silent, the oppressive energy lifting as the shards of glass lay scattered at my feet. Gap 3S. One mirror down, but many more to go. Gap 3S. The hunt had only just begun, and the dangers ahead were sure to be even greater. Gap 3S. But with each step, I grew more determined to break the curse and reclaim my life. Gap 3S. The first mirror was destroyed, but the journey was far from over. Gap 3S. I steeled myself for the challenges ahead, knowing that I had the strength and resolve to face whatever horrors awaited me. Gap 3S. With the shattered mirror behind me, I left the mansion ready to continue my quest. The next mirror awaited, and I would not stop until every last one was destroyed. As I left the decaying ballroom, the map guided me to an even more foreboding location, a forgotten crypt hidden deep beneath the mansion. The air was thick with the scent of decay, and the oppressive silence was punctuated only by the echo of my footsteps. Gap 3S. The crypt was cold, its walls lined with ancient crumbling stone, and in the center stood the second mirror, Unlike the first, this mirror's surface was almost liquid, rippling with a dark, malevolent energy. Gap 3S. My reflection emerged, more twisted and grotesque than before, its eyes burning with an unnatural fire. It sneered at me, its mouth twisting into a cruel parody of a smile, daring me to confront it. Gap 3S. Clutching the amulet tighter, I began the incantation once more, my voice echoing off the crypt walls. The reflection's expression shifted from mocking to rage, and it began to mimic my movements, trying to disrupt the ritual. Gap 3S. The air around me grew colder, and I could feel the mirror's malevolent power trying to overpower me, but I pressed on, my voice growing stronger with each word. Gap 3S. Suddenly, the reflection lunged at me, its hands reaching through the mirror's surface as if it were no longer bound by the glass. I stumbled back, narrowly avoiding its grasp, but I refused to let fear take hold. Gap 3S. The amulet glowed with a fierce light, and I could feel its power coursing through me. With a final, defiant shout, I completed the incantation and thrust the amulet towards the mirror. Gap 3S. A surge of energy erupted from the amulet, striking the mirror and causing it to shatter in a violent explosion of light and sound. The crypt fell silent once more, the oppressive energy dissipating as the shards of the mirror lay scattered at my feet. Gap 3S. Breathing heavily, I gathered my thoughts. The second mirror was destroyed, but the journey was far from over. Gap 3S. Each battle was more intense than the last, but with each victory, I grew more determined. The next mirror awaited, and I would not rest until every last one was shattered. Gap 3S. With renewed resolve, I left the crypt, ready to face the challenges that lay ahead. The hunt continued, and I would not be stopped. Gap 3S. The map's final destination was a remote cave, hidden away from the world. As I approached, the air grew colder, and a sense of dread washed over me. Gap 3S. This cave, more foreboding than any place I'd encountered, held the final mirror. The entrance was narrow, just wide enough for me to squeeze through, and the darkness inside was absolute. My flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the cave walls as I ventured deeper. Gap 3S. In the heart of the cave, the final mirror stood. Its surface was unlike any other, a swirling vortex of darkness and light pulsating with an overwhelming power. Gap 3S. My reflection appeared, more powerful and sinister than ever before. Its eyes glowed with an intense, malevolent energy, and its presence was almost suffocating. Gap 3S. Clutching the amulet, I began the incantation, but this time the reflection was ready. It mimicked my every move, its voice overlapping with mine, creating a dissonant echo that threatened to break my concentration. Gap 3S. The cave walls began to tremble, and the air grew thick with the mirror's dark energy. I could feel it trying to pull me in, to consume me. Gap 3S. Drawing on every ounce of strength and knowledge I had gained, I pressed on. My voice grew louder, more resolute as I fought to complete the ritual. Gap 3S. The amulet glowed brighter, its light pushing back against the darkness. The reflection's face twisted in rage, its hands reaching out from the mirror, trying to drag me into the abyss. Gap 3S. But I stood firm, refusing to give in to fear. With a final powerful incantation, I thrust the amulet towards the mirror. Gap 3S. The cave was filled with a blinding light as the amulet's energy collided with the mirror's dark vortex. The mirror shattered in a deafening explosion, fragments of glass scattering across the cave floor. Gap 3S. The oppressive energy vanished, replaced by a calm, serene silence. Breathing heavily, I looked around the now peaceful cave. Gap 3S. The final mirror was destroyed, and the nightmare was over. The battle had been fierce, but I had emerged victorious. Gap 3S. As I left the cave, a sense of relief washed over me. The hunt was over, and I could finally live free from the reflections that had haunted me. Gap 3S. As I stepped out of the cave, the weight of the world seemed to lift from my shoulders. The oppressive energy that had followed me for so long was gone. The whispers had ceased, and for the first time in what felt like an eternity, the air was clear and still. The final mirror was destroyed, and with it, the sinister reflections that had haunted my every move. Gap 3S. I took a deep breath, savoring the freedom that now enveloped me. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but I had emerged victorious. The amulet, now just a simple trinket, hung around my neck as a reminder of the battles fought and won. Gap 3S. As I walked away from the cave, the fear that had once gripped my heart began to fade. The memories of the mirrors and the malevolent reflections would always remain, but they no longer held power over me. I was free. Free to live my life without the constant shadow of dread. Free to embrace the world with open arms. Gap 3S. The sun began to set, casting a warm, golden glow over the landscape. It was as if the world itself was celebrating my newfound freedom. I smiled, feeling a sense of peace and contentment that I had not known for so long. The nightmare was over, and a new chapter of my life was about to begin. Gap 3S. Though the journey had been perilous, it had also made me stronger. I had faced the darkness and emerged into the light. And now, with the mirrors destroyed and the whispers silenced, I could finally move forward, unburdened and unafraid. Gap 3S. As the last rays of sunlight dipped below the horizon, I knew that the memory of the mirrors would always remain. But it was a memory I could now look back on with strength and resilience, knowing that I had conquered the shadows and reclaimed my life. Gap 3S. With a heart full of hope and a spirit unbroken, I continued my journey, ready to embrace the future and all the possibilities it held. For I was free, and nothing could ever take that away from me.